if he had a lightning strike, I would actually recommend lightning strike more than lightning bolt because it's cheaper. It only costs 3, and while it only deals 4 damage, it's much more easy to use. All right. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Yeah, Orm's Chant, I can go over your new deck a little bit later if you want to post it in the chat. I'll open it in another window and we can look at it a little bit later. So yeah, you can sort of see that this deck right here is focusing on getting creatures on the board, clearing them with spells like Word of Light, Lightning Bolt, Sunburst, and then using Bless to sort of give his creatures an extra punch. So this deck is pretty logical for me. His fortunes here, while they're helpful, like Gold Pile just gives you an extra gold to spend, so that can be really effective early game, can get you board presence a lot more quickly. So I don't have any problem with either of these, except Fortified Outpost, I think, is harder to play than it would seem. So yeah, I think this is a decent deck. I would call it probably a creature aggro deck, and I was on Reddit earlier today and someone mentioned there were 4 deck types, and there was the aggro deck, which you would normally associate with Inferno, where they have all of their high-powered creatures that just deal massive damage. Obviously you guys have played against it, so you know. Inferno is very offensive and very weak defensively, so they're trying to win by attacking you straight on, just doing damage to your hero, and that's what an aggro deck is. And the second type of deck is creature aggro, where, or maybe it was control aggro. Yeah, it was control aggro, where basically it's the same sort of idea where you want to use your creatures offensively, but you want to at the same time control the board. So what you're doing is using your creatures to kill off the enemy creatures rather than just going straight for his hero. You want to maintain board control throughout the game, and that's what this Haven style deck is. There are also control style decks where you'll see decks like the Nurgle Poke deck, which is a top tier deck. It was even like one of the best decks right before the Forgotten Wars expansion. And basically what it does is prevents you from playing creatures, kills or sends creatures back that you do play, and just slowly whittles you down with POW Death Seekers and Week of Austerity dealing damage to you. And it's no fun to play against, just completely locks the board down. And then there is the 4th deck type, which I don't actually remember what it was right offhand, but I can't find the Reddit post either. But either way, those are the basic. You have aggro, removal, or lock, and control decks. Yeah, fun times. So basically, you just want your deck to sort of follow one of those things, and then do a good job of doing that goal and succeeding at that goal. So I'll move into this 3rd deck here, sent in by Gangrene88. And you see that he has done as the people on the forums or people on Reddit would advise. He has whittled it down to only creatures and spells. You'll see this deck is fairly similar to the last one, except he has these creatures here, and he has Hylixian Librarians. These neutral creatures are generally not as good. Obviously he has Radiant Glories and Sunriders, both of which are very good. Again, more Warrior Seraphs. This is a very common card in lower elo decks because it's fairly common. You start with a couple, and it's decent damage. Regenerate seems like a good thing. And he has the typical light magic spells, and more lightning bolts and more cyclones. So this is a good deck to sort of address my last point, which is you want your deck to do something, whether it's control aggro like the last one where you have creatures on the board and you want to keep board control by killing enemy creatures, or in some cases like this one in particular is probably the exact same style of deck, although he just doesn't realize it yet. That's sort of what Haven's strengths are, and you want to play to those strengths, at least with Cassandra, and at least with this type of creature spell combo with Cassandra. You want to go for a creature aggro or control aggro type deck. So with that in mind, We look at cards like the Lesser Air Elemental, which is a 4 cost, 2 attack, 2 retaliation, 6 health. Basically, it's a tanky creature that is fairly expensive for what it is, and most neutral cards are generally not worth their cost. The reason I say that is because it has no special ability, and you look at the Chosen of Elrath, he is the same 4 cost here, 4 might, 1 spell requirement, and 2/2/6, except his special is really good in a lot of ways. First of all, he's immune to retaliation, and he's a magic shooter. Those are both good things. And then he has Mending, so he can choose not to attack, and he'll heal all damage at the end of his turn. That's a pretty powerful thing if your opponent doesn't have very much in the way of removal, and by that I mean like a Death Seal or Soul Reaver or a Broken Bridge or something like that. If the opponent doesn't have removal, this creature can stay on the board for the entire game. Whereas the Lesser Air Elemental, it's a decent tank, but it's just not as cost effective as the Chosen of Elrath. So in that case, generally try to avoid neutral creatures if you can. Now, this spell in particular, Cyclone, I want to focus on that for a moment, because like in the last deck, where the Fortified Outpost is sort of playing against the deck's strength of outnumbering the opponent, the Cyclone is playing against the deck's strength of trying to kill enemy creatures and gain board control. And the reason I say that is Cyclone only deals 1 damage to all creatures of an enchanted line. So 75% of the time you use this card, you're going to be hitting a 1 or 2 creatures in the same line. It's pretty rare that you actually hit 3 or 4 creatures, at least when your opponent knows what he's doing. And all it does is it prevents 1 line from attacking, basically. The 1 damage is almost negligible, and it's 4 cost. So it's a very expensive for what it does, and this is definitely what I would consider a control card. And this deck does not benefit from having a spell that is this low in damage. If it's going to have any spells, it needs to be dealing damage. Like Sunburst is only 2 cost, and it deals 3 damage to all creatures of target row. So 50% of the time, or probably 75% of the time, you're only hitting 1 creature, but it's still dealing 3 damage for only 2 cost, and that's a very good value, and it's a good spell. Bless, I don't like Bless as much, but I don't need to criticize that right now. For this, it's fine. It gives a creature +2 permanent, and it can have its uses sometimes. Word of Light, obviously, it's not a high damage. It deals 2 damage to all enemy creatures, though, so it's guaranteed to deal significant damage to everything. So that makes it worthwhile, I think. Lightning Bolt, obviously, we already discussed, is a massive nuke, but Cyclone just does not fit. In my opinion, this is a wasted card. It does not help you achieve your goal. And, yeah, you want every card in your deck to help you achieve that goal. So, what's up with my headset? It broke and it's duct taped. I'm sorry. I bought a new one and it didn't work, and then I was too lazy to buy or return that one and then get another one. Sad times for my headsets. I know. Alright, so, oh, I remember the 4th deck type now. It is Combo. And the Combo deck type is what you would consider an OTK or a mill deck or something like that, where basically, if you don't know what an OTK is, it is a 1-turn kill. A 1-turn kill deck is exactly that. It means that the enemy will stall you out until their combo is ready, and then they will play a sequence of cards that kills you instantly. If any of you have been playing recently above 1,000 ELO, then you've probably noticed Amar. And Amar is just an amazing hero that can crush anyone ever with using his entire deck in 1 turn. And it's quite an amazing sight to see. And there's obviously a few more OTKs, but that's the one that comes to mind right now. Obviously there are other combos that you can have, but I don't need to go into all those right now. I just remembered that and I wanted to mention it. Alright, so I did just get this update. This is version 2 from Orm's Chant. We can see his rework of his deck here. And I might just go ahead and go a little bit deeper into this build and acknowledge each card on itself. So we see that he still has the 2 DAs and 2 POW Death Seekers, and both of these cards are offensive cards. These are included in every rush deck ever. They're both very good. Obviously the Dark Assassin only has 2 health, but he deals 4 damage, which is massive for a 2-cost creature. Now, a lot of people don't play with Dark Assassins if they're not using a rush deck, and I don't consider this a rush deck, but the reason I think the Dark Assassin is acceptable with Cassandra is because of the presence of a Holy Praetorian, giving it the added melee guard 2. So all of a sudden his 2 health becomes 4 health against like 60% of creatures. POW Death Seeker, this is a card that's always useful. It's just 3 surprise damage that someone else can't account for. I would even say that this card does not complement this deck's strategy overall, but I would still hesitate to remove it just because that 3 surprise damage can do so much. It can kill a massive threat that is something like maybe a Dark Assassin. It can just deal 3 damage if you're ever in a close game and you have him down to a couple hit points. That's a pretty solid card. Griffin Mounted Spearman. Swift is good. Swift is always good. 2 attack is low. 3 retaliation is pretty high. 6 health is okay. So basically, this creature, if anyone's familiar with Sanctuary, it's like the exact same of same thing as a Kappa. I say that because I play Sanctuary, and a Kappa is a 3-cost that is these same stats, but it doesn't have Swift. Now, the reason Swift is good is because this lets him attack, move to block something else, and then he'll be threatening with his 3 retaliation, and he can hang around for a while with his 6 health. Although for 4 cost, I'm not sure that that is the best possible card you could have, but it's certainly not bad. Angel of Mercy is a card that it lets you take a random creature card from your graveyard and put it in your hand when it's deployed, which is a very powerful ability to have. It's 2/2/6, so its stats aren't that impressive, but it's this that you would play the card for, its special ability here. And with decks like this, where you don't have any wolf captains, you don't have any like really good creatures, I would say, Angel of Mercy is significantly less valuable, because a lot of the time you'll be reviving something like an Expert Marksman or a Tithe Collector, and you don't want the Angel of Mercy to bring back a Tithe Collector. That is a waste of the Angel of Mercy. So it's not exactly the best card for this deck, I would say. If there was 2 more Griffin Marksmen, I would approve of that more than the Angel of Mercy. But it can also have its uses sometimes. If, for instance, you get Radiant Glories out early and they get nuked by an enemy's Lightning Strike or something like that, play the Angel of Mercy, get more Radiant Glories back. It's never a bad thing. Alright, and all of the decks we've seen, I think, have had Warrior Seraphs in them. Now I want to talk a little bit about Heal and Regenerate, which is something that most new players use or utilize with Cassandra. Obviously the reason for that is that you start with Warrior Seraphs and you start with Devoted Sisters, which have Regenerate and Heal 2 respectively. And the problem with these special abilities is that there are so many ways to remove creatures like this in one turn that anything that applies on a later turn is not as valuable as it seems. So for instance, obviously this deck does not include them, but Devoted Sisters, I don't know if any of these decks did actually. They did not. So that's a good thing that people are not including those. But there is a Vestal here, which is interesting. It's an interesting card. It's like a Devoted Sister Plus with Heal 3. So Heal is generally bad for the exact same reason. A card like the Vestal